Today's lesson is on conflict between church and state. During the Middle Ages, all Christians in Western Europe belonged to the Roman Catholic Church. This church was organized as a hierarchy in which all members of the clergy had a rank. The head priest of a parish or local church was called a pastor. A diocese was a group of neighboring parishes. Each diocese was governed by a bishop who ruled his diocese from a cathedral or large centrally located church. Dioceses were grouped regionally into provinces called archdioceses, which were ruled by an archbishop. In turn, these archbishops were governed by cardinals, who lived in Rome and counseled the Pope. The Pope was the Bishop of Rome, a title inherited from the Apostle Peter, whom Christians believed was chosen by Jesus to lead Christ's followers after his death. In the medieval era, the church wielded great power. By the year 1050, the church was the largest landholder in Europe. The church had its own code of law called canon law, and it administered its own courts, which rivaled the feudal courts. Very few people outside of the clergy could read or write. This included kings and nobles, which meant that priests and monks served as record keepers and assistants to royalty. Consequently, the church gained political position and power. At times, the church and state officials worked very well together, but at other times, they fought over power. By the time the monk Hildebrand became pope in 1073, the church had grown corrupt in many places. Many bishops were also powerful land-holding nobles. They worked with kings to extend their influence and increase their wealth. Because of this corruption, many people had lost respect for the church. However, the monk Hildebrand, who took the papal title Gregory VII, represented a movement to reform the church. Specifically, he wanted to end the practice of lay investiture. Lay investiture meant that important church officials could be chosen by kings instead of exclusively by the Pope. Through lay investiture, a king could be sure that a bishop or archbishop would support him instead of the Pope or other church official. In 1075, Gregory VII issued a document stating that only the Pope could appoint cardinals and bishops, thereby outlawing lay investiture. In this document, the Pope warned that kings who disobeyed his orders could be excommunicated or deprived of the rights of church membership. Since such censure banned an individual from the church community, it was also believed that excommunication deprived an individual of the Henry IV, the Holy Roman Emperor, was upset by Gregory's decree. Henry relied on the loyalty of the clergy to support him against the powerful German nobles. In an angry letter addressed to Hildebrand, no longer pope but false monk, Henry called for Gregory to step down as pope, to descend, to be damned through the ages. Gregory responded by excommunicating Henry, which meant that the emperor was excluded from the sacraments and that his subjects did not have to obey him. When Henry realized that he could not defeat Pope Gregory VII or overcome excommunication, he decided to ask for forgiveness in hopes that he could save his throne. He traveled over mountains during the winter and found the Pope in his castle at Canossa, located in the Alps in northern Italy. Barefoot and wearing only rough cloak, Henry prayed and begged in the snow outside the gates of Canossa. After 3 days, the Pope forgave the emperor. According to tradition, the Countess Matilda of Tuscany was one of the Pope's strongest allies and helped reconcile Gregory and Henry. The Pope was victorious in this round of conflict between church and state, but the struggles continued. In 1122, representatives of Pope Gregory VII, Emperor Henry IV, and important nobles met in the German city of Worms, where they reached a compromise on the question of lay investiture. This treaty, called the Concordat of Worms, stated that the church officials alone would have the authority to elect cardinals, bishops, and abbots. while the king would retain the power to bestow feudal titles and land grants to the church officials. This division of power was represented by a solemn ceremony in which the bishop received 3 objects: a ring, a staff, and a rod. The staff and ring represented the bishop's role as a spiritual leader. The rod represented his role as a political leader. And this concordat showed that despite the conflict between church and state, the church remained deeply involved in all aspects of life in the Middle Ages.